The gods have always walked beside us, not as thundering giants in the clouds, but as memories that hum softly beneath the skin, in stories passed from campfires to classrooms, and in dreams that flicker with half-familiar faces. Tonight we won't chase them. We won't fear them. Instead, we'll drift gently through the ancient rivers of their legacy, tracing the bloodlines that whisper through every demigod's veins. Some say power comes from prophecy, others say it comes from training. But long before a sword is raised, or a quest is answered, their power begins with lineage, with a name sung into existence by the gods themselves. Every demigod, from the mightiest warrior to the gentlest spellweaver, carries a thread of Olympus stitched into their soul. And these threads are not alike. Some shimmer like lightning, others roll like ocean tides, and a few flicker like candlelight in the dark. We speak often of the heroes, but tonight we speak of what made them. We will remember the children not as sidekicks or soldiers, but as extensions of their divine parents, flawed, fierce, and beautifully unfinished. Some were claimed, some never were. Some were born of love, others of revenge, and some from silence so old it forgets its own voice. But all were part of something bigger, an unbroken line of myth and mortality. So lay back, breathe deeply, let Olympus unfold slowly like the turning pages of a dream. We begin where all heavy myths do, with the eldest thrones, the broken oaths, and the brothers who tried to shape fate itself. The sea, the sky, the dead, the big three. Before the gods had names, before mortals had myths, before time itself dared to begin ticking, there was only one thing: chaos. Not the screaming kind, not the noisy mess we call disorder, but a silent, formless void, a great yawning breath in the dark, filled with endless possibility. And from that primordial space, from the nothing that held everything, came the first powers. These weren't gods in the way we understand them. They didn't have thrones, temples, or children who swung swords at summer camps. No, the primordials were the very fabric of existence. Chaos, the void. Nyx, the night. Gaia, the earth. Uranus, the sky. Tartarus, the abyss. And Kronos, the crawling titan of time. They weren't parents so much as forces, but somehow they birthed all that came next. If Olympus is a palace, then these primordials are its bedrock, hidden beneath centuries of stone and story. Chaos gave rise to Gaia and Tartarus, earth and abyss, two opposite wombs of creation. Gaia, the fertile ground, stirred and formed Uranus, the sky. Together they birthed the Titans, but that was only the surface. Nyx, daughter of Chaos and sister to Erebus, bore children stranger and darker than any prophecy dared name. Moros, doom. Hypnos, sleep. Thanatos, death. Nemesis, vengeance, and more. Even the Olympians feared her. Even Zeus, king of thunder, stayed silent when Nyx passed by. She was not evil, she was truth. Night has always known what day tries to forget. And Tartarus, oh Tartarus, not a place but a being, a hunger, the prison beneath all prisons, the punishment that breathes. Some demigods think they walked into him, but the truth is they were swallowed. Nico D'Angelo once ventured there, not just physically but soul deep. And in doing so, he brushed the edge of a force older than the gods he served. Hade, Nico's father, is the son of Kronos, who is the son of Gaia, who is born of chaos, meaning Nico is the final ember of a very ancient fire. His shadows, his isolation, his silence, they are echoes of Nyx and Erebus, of the first darkness. And the same is true for so many demigods. Percy Jackson's control overseas. A gift from Poseidon? Yes. But Poseidon was born of Rhea and Kronos, who came from Gaia and Uranus. So when Percy parts the waves, it's not just Olympus responding, it's the very bones of the earth and sky. Annabeth's wisdom? Traced from Athena, daughter of Zeus, son of Kronos, born of time. Even her fierce logic is the ripple of an older balance. The bloodlines aren't straight lines, they're spirals, winding, ancient, and laced with pain. Uranus feared his children and locked them away. Gaia rebelled with Kronos, her son, who overthrew Uranus and then swallowed his own children in paranoia. Even the first family dinners of the cosmos were tragedies. Yet from those betrayals came the Olympians, who then birthed demigods. And though the Primordials are rarely named anymore, their influence slips into everything. A child of Hades may walk the campgrounds, but deep down part of them remembers the cold hum of the abyss. A son of Hypnos may nap under a tree, but his dreams twist like the hands of Nyx, curling into visions older than Olympus itself. Even the mist, that shimmering veil that hides monsters and magic from mortal eyes, is a remnant of primordial thinking. It's not deception. It's protection. A soft hush from Gaia. A mother shielding her stories from being forgotten. Some say the mist was born from chaos directly, a side effect of reality being too vast to look at all at once. And if that's true, then every prophecy, every illusion, every flash of power in a demigod's hand is laced with the DNA of beings who were never meant to be understood. Even time, Kronos himself, wasn't just a titan who ruled and fell. He was a concept, the slow bleeding of now into then. His sons inherited his paranoia, his hunger to control the future, and so we watch as his blood flows forward into Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, and into their children, who battle not just monsters, but fate itself. It's why demigods struggle with destiny, because their ancestors invented it. The blood of Gaia still pulses in the earth. The blood of Nyx still pours into night. The blood of Tartarus waits in shadow, and chaos, vast, formless, patient chaos, watches everything. The primordials may not speak, but through the children of the gods, through their heartbreaks, through their powers, through their losses and victories, they are still felt. And now, with the veil of history pulled back, we see how these ancient forces aren't just names in a scroll. They are the sleeping heartbeat of every hero's journey. As we step into the next chapter, we leave the void behind and walk up the mountain, toward Olympus, toward the gods who rule now, and toward the children who carry not only the future, but the ancient past. And so we linger a moment longer in that forgotten age when the earth had only just stirred and the sky had only just opened its eyes. Gaia, mother of mountains and soil, oceans and forests, was not born but simply, awoke. She stretched across the nothingness that chaos left behind and called forth Uranus, the sky, to lie beside her. Not out of love, not the kind we sing songs about, but out of balance. Earth could not rise without sky above it. Their union birthed the first beings with names, the Titans, the Cyclopes, and the Hecatoncheires, creatures of raw power and impossible form. But Uranus, seeing the monstrous potential in his own children, feared them. He cast them deep into Gaia's body, into the heart of the earth, trying to bury what he could not understand. Gaia groaned with pain, not from childbirth, but from betrayal. She had created life and was forced to cage it. Her agony echoed through valleys and mountain roots, and it was from that anguish that rebellion was born. She fashioned a blade of flint, a sickle, sharp as fate, and gave it to her son Kronos, the youngest and boldest of the Titans. One night, as Uranus descended to cover the earth once more, Kronos struck. Blood from Uranus spilled across the land, and from it came new entities, the Furies, who would one day chase Oathbreakers across the world, and Aphrodite, who would rise from the foam of vengeance. Kronos, now king of the world, took his father's throne. But power, once stolen, becomes something you fear to lose. Kronos had heard a prophecy that one of his own children would overthrow him, just as he had done to Uranus. So when Rhea, his sister and queen, bore him children, Kronos swallowed them whole, one by one: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. The gods who would later shape Olympus were first kept in darkness, growing not in body, but in story. Until the sixth child was born, Zeus and Rhea, desperate to save even one, hid him away in a cave and fed her husband a stone wrapped in swaddling cloth. Kronos devoured it, none the wiser. And the sky trembled, not because of the lie, but because fate had just changed direction. Zeus grew in secret, nurtured by goats and guarded by silence, and when he was ready, he returned not just to fight, but to free. He forced Kronos to vomit up his siblings, now full-grown and angry, and together they waged war against the Titans. This war, the Titanomachy, shook the very bones of the world. Mountains shattered, rivers changed course, time itself slowed. And when the dust settled, the Titans were defeated. Kronos was thrown into Tartarus, and the new gods, the Olympians, built their thrones on Mount Olympus. But even in victory, the echoes of the Primordials remained. Kronos, son of Gaia and Uranus, was the link between sky, earth, and time, and that blood still runs through his children. Hades inherited the shadow of Uranus's cruelty. Poseidon inherited the rage of the seas formed from spilled divine blood. Zeus, who struck down his father, carries both the hope of rebellion and the paranoia of legacy. And their children, Nico, Percy, Thalia, Bianca, and Jason, are not just demigods. They are living contradictions, gifts and curses, lightning bolts with aching hearts. The Primordials are not present, but they are not gone. Gaia herself would one day rise again, furious at how her children were discarded and forgotten, whispering into the earth and stirring the dreams of monsters. She called to those who had been rejected by Olympus the giants, the forgotten bloodlines, and promised them a world where demigods would fall and the gods would crumble. And in that war, the giant war children of the Big Three stood again at the edge of the world. Jason's leadership, Percy's fury, Nico's darkness, all of it, all of them, were shaped by choices made eons ago. When Gaia cried out and Uranus silenced her, when Kronos lifted the blade, when Rhea chose to lie. The bloodlines we trace at Camp Half-Blood are not linear. They are tangled like roots under an old tree, reaching into soil that remembers. Even now, when demigods lift their swords or read ancient Greek or dream of their godly parents, the pulse beneath it all comes from this first betrayal, this first war. The Primordials are not good or evil. They are the frame beneath the painting. They do not play favorites, but they watch, and sometimes, through cracks in the mist or ripples in the underworld, they reach out, not to destroy, not to save, just to remind that all this, the cabins, the quests, the monsters, the friendships, the heartbreak, it began before names, before language, before Olympus ever stood tall. It began in silence, and silence always remembers. And so we arrive at the final thread of this ancient loom. where the whispers of chaos fall quiet and the dust of titans begins to settle. But the story is far from finished. For even as Zeus claimed the skies, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the depths, the bones of the world still groaned beneath their feet, carrying the memory of betrayal, of ambition, of cycles that refused to break. The Olympians did not rise as blank slates. They inherited blood soaked in prophecy and fear, in arrogance and awe. And that is why the demigods who walk in their shadow often carry more weight than even they know. When Percy Jackson steps into battle, it is not just his father's power that moves the ocean. It is Gia's ancient sorrow, Tartarus's hunger, chaos' silence. When Nico D'Angelo speaks to the dead, the shadows do not simply obey because of Hades, but because death itself, Thanatos, a child of Nyx, hears in him the old language. When Annabeth builds, thinks, plans, she does so with a mind sharpened by Athena, yes, but also by the lingering order and entropy seeded by the cosmos long before Olympus ever knew her name. The bloodlines do not end, they flow, they echo, they bloom into strange new shapes. The monsters demigods fight, often born from the mingling of primordial forces and divine recklessness. The mist, still thick with Nyx's hush and chaos mystery. And dreams, oh, the dreams are not simply visions from the gods, but fragments of the first stories, drifting into mortal sleep, searching for new minds to shape. Even the fates, the Moirai, who spin, measure, and cut the threads of life, are children of night, not of the Olympians, but of Nyx herself. The ones who decide the length of a life do not answer to Zeus. They answer to something deeper, older. The very stars that shine down on Camp Half-Blood. They blink in patterns formed by Uranus, scattered across the sky by Cronus's blade. The constellations are not decorations, they are scars, glowing bright so we never forget. And so when a child of Apollo looks upward and draws strength, they are not just seeing a sky ruled by their father. They are seeing a wound that has become a map. And this is why legacy matters. Why bloodlines are not just power charts, but stories layered in story, meanings wrapped in myth. The primordial bloodlines remind us that demigods are not small echoes of great gods. They are crossroads where history and destiny meet. And with every choice they make, every monster they defeat, every prophecy they defy, they rewrite what it means to carry divine blood. Now the earth quiets once more. The sky settles. Tartarus waits, but does not stir. And from the bones of time and shadow, something new rises. Olympus, not just as a place, but as an idea structured, hierarchical, wild with family drama, but powerful nonetheless. The era of the primordials slips into the soil, and from it, the 12 Olympians bloom. Gods with personalities, rivalries, lovers, grudges, and children, they step forward not as mysteries, but as characters. Gods with faces, with tempers, with favorite cities. And so, we now climb from the dark foundations of the universe and rise into sunlight, into marble halls and golden thrones, into stories told at campfires, whispered in training arenas, painted on shields and daggers. It is time to meet the 12, the rulers of Olympus, the parents of heroes, the flawed, fiery, unforgettable gods of a new era. Let us begin with 5 whose names echo like thunder through every page of a demigod's journey. Athena, Ares, Apollo, Artemis, Hermes, the minds, the warriors, the poets, the hunters, the messengers. Their blood runs hot through the veins of Camp Half-Blood, and their stories are only just beginning. Athena was not born in the way most gods were. She did not emerge from sea foam or rise from shadows. She arrived with a crack of thought and a burst of strategy, full-grown, armored and radiant. Born from the skull of Zeus, after a blinding headache split the sky. No mother carried her. No cradle softened her landing. She was an idea made flesh, the divine embodiment of wisdom, warcraft, and measured intellect. And from the very moment she took her first breath on Olympus, she was already thinking, already calculating, already planning the course of gods and mortals alike. Athena was not merely a goddess of knowledge. She was its protector, its wielder, its sharpest edge. Her cities thrived not through brute strength, but clever design. Her temples stood tall, not just as places of worship, but as libraries of invention. Where Ares roared, Athena whispered. Where Poseidon flooded, she built walls. Where Apollo sang, she questioned. Her power was not loud but lasting, and those who carried her blood, her chosen demigods, bore the mark of her mind. They were planners, puzzle solvers, architects of fate, but they were also burdened. For wisdom can isolate, strategy can harden the heart, and the children of Athena were often older than their years, carrying the weight of insight and the loneliness that came with always knowing more than those around them. Annabeth Chase, daughter of Athena, stands as the clearest thread in that tapestry. From her earliest days, she saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. She redesigned Camp Half-Blood's defenses before most demigods had even learned to hold a sword. She sought the ancient heart of Daedalus's labyrinth not for glory, but for understanding. And every battle she fought, every wound she took, she did so with purpose. She was brave but never reckless, fierce but always fair. Her mother's presence was not just a shadow at her shoulder, but a compass in her mind. And yet, even with Athena's legacy burning bright within her, Annabeth had to forge her own path. The gods, after all, do not guide every step, and wisdom, as a gift, can sometimes be a curse. It was wisdom that led Annabeth into danger, that drew her to the darker truths of Olympus, that tore open questions with no easy answers. What do you do when you see the flaw in every plan? How do you love when trust is a calculation? These are the questions the children of Athena must live with, not because their mother is cruel, but because her gift is double-edged. The bloodline of Athena does not simply pass on knowledge, it passes on the hunger for it. The drive to know more, do more, be more, and sometimes that hunger aches like an old wound. But oh, how brightly her children shine. In battle, they are precise. In counsel, they are sharp. In crisis, they are calm. And when others fall apart, they are the ones quietly stitching the pieces back together. There is power in strength, yes, but there is power too, in thought, in silence before action, in patience before war. This is the legacy of Athena, not just a goddess of wisdom, but a mother of minds. And as we move from her story to the next, from intellect to fury, from strategy to sheer force, we leave the quiet hum of planning and step into the roaring heartbeat of war. Ares awaits, loud, proud, and filled with a fire that burns just as bright as the cold logic of his half-sister. The children of Ares are next, and with them comes a bloodline of battle, bruises, and a different kind of loyalty. Where Athena plotted and prepared, Ares charged. He was not a thinker, he was a roar. The god of war in its rawest form, Ares did not fight for peace or justice or victory. He fought because he could. Because the clash of weapons thrilled him, because the thunder of armies made him feel alive. His power was not wrapped in reason, it was primal, fearsome, undeniably present. He was the god who stood at the front, not the one who ordered from the back. And though the other gods mocked him for his simplicity, for his temper, for his lack of foresight, Ares never flinched. He knew what he was. War incarnate. The heat of blood on the battlefield, the rush before a first strike, the endless beat of boots and shields. And those who carried his blood, they knew it too. The children of Ares are not subtle. They don't hide in shadows or whisper strategies. They are the storm, the hammer, the shout. Camp Half-Blood has seen many sons and daughters of the war. God come and go, but few have burned as bright or as brutal as Clarisse Larue. A warrior to her core, Clarisse carried her father's anger like a badge. Her words were sharp, her fists sharper, but beneath the roughness was something deeper. Pride, loyalty, a need to prove herself, not just to others, but to Ares himself. Because for all his noise, Ares was not a gentle father. He praised strength, mocked weakness, and expected his children to be warriors first, everything else second. It created a bloodline of fighters' children who learned early that pain was part of love, that discipline was survival, that emotion was a distraction unless it could be channeled into a battle cry. Clarisse fought because it was how she was taught to speak. Her friendship with Selena Beauregard, daughter of Aphrodite, showed glimpses of softness, but even that came wrapped in armor. And yet, when the time came to defend her camp, Clarisse didn't hesitate. She led the charge. She brought down monsters. She carried the weight of a prophecy not meant for her. That's what people forget about the children of Ares. They aren't just hot-headed brutes. They are protectors. They are willing to take the hit, to walk through fire, to bleed so others don't have to. Their rage is not chaos. It is purpose. And while Athena's children think ahead and Poseidon's ride the waves, Ares' children dig their heels into the dirt and dare anyone to push them. And when you see them on the training fields covered in bruises, sweat glistening on their foreheads, grins splitting their faces after a hard-fought match, you begin to understand the strange beauty of their legacy. It is not polished, not elegant, but it is honest. And in a world where monsters wear many faces, sometimes what you need most is someone who punches first and asks questions, never. From the red-hot edge of Ares' battlefield, we now drift into the golden warmth of music, healing, and sunlight. From fury to focus, from clenched fists to open palms, Apollo waits, a twin of prophecy, a bringer of light. And his children, dreamers, archers, medics, poets, carry with them a different kind of power. Let us follow the sunbeam and see what gifts his bloodline brings. If Ares is the heartbeat of war, then Apollo is the breath between battles, the warmth of dawn, the hush of a healing song, the stillness that follows a storm. He is contradiction made divine, sun and shadow, poetry and plague, prophecy and playfulness. As the god of music, light, and truth, Apollo shines not just in the skies, but in the quiet places people forget to look. And his children, the demigods born from that golden fire, carry a legacy that is luminous and weighty all at once. They are not built for combat alone, though they can strike when needed. They are built to observe, to heal, to see further. And seeing, as any oracle knows, is often a heavier curse than blindness. For what do you do when the future whispers in your dreams? When words come to you not as language, but as rhythm and rhyme and warning? When you feel a pain that hasn't happened yet and can't stop it? This is the life of Apollo's children. Gifted, yes. Glowing, yes. But always caught between the beauty of knowing and the burden of truth.
Will Solace is the name that shines brightest among them, a healer, a leader, a quiet force of good in a world that bleeds. His gift was never just in mending bones or stitching wounds. It was in his calm, his presence, his ability to stand beside broken things and believe they could be whole again. And even in war, even when Camp Half-Blood trembled, Will brought light, not by overpowering others, but by reminding them of what still mattered: music, friendship, holding hands when the darkness creeps in. Apollo loved deeply, sometimes selfishly, sometimes foolishly, but always with fire. And that love echoes in his bloodline. His children love like artists, boldly, messily, completely. They see the world in color, in rhythm, in stories waiting to be told. But they also carry the sharp sting of loss. For prophecy does not play favorites. It shows endings as easily as beginnings. And no one forgets that Apollo himself in mortal form, as Lester, walked the path of pain. He lost friends, faced guilt, learned what it meant to fall and rise again. That lesson, that human truth, was perhaps his greatest gift to his children. That even gods can change. That light, no matter how dimmed, can be rekindled. And so his demigods live in that in-between. They are the singers around the campfire, the medics in the infirmary, the archers who hit their mark not with rage but with grace. They are hope with a heartbeat, light with a spine. And now, as we follow the sun westward, we step into its shadow, not darkness, but moonlight. A twin waits in the trees, cold-eyed, steady, divine in her silence. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, awaits not with open arms, but with a poised arrow. And though she bears no children of her own, her legacy is etched into the stories of the maidens who follow her, and the bloodline she swore to protect from afar. Let us now walk into the silver woods of Artemis, where choice and devotion become their own kind of power. Artemis, twin to Apollo, goddess of the moon and the hunt, exists in stillness. Where her brother blazes in song and sunlight, she moves like a shadow, precise, silent, and absolute. She does not bear children. She chose never to. Not because she could not love, but because she loved her independence more, her freedom, her sisterhood, her right to remain whole in a world that so often tried to break and bind divine women. Artemis was young forever. Her power was youth without compromise, strength without entanglement. She ran with wolves and whispered to the trees. Her arrows found their mark not because she needed to kill, but because she could not bear injustice to live. And though she never passed down blood to demigods, she passed down something stronger, a choice. The hunters of Artemis girls who refused the games of Olympus, who turned their backs on mortality's sorrow and the gods' manipulation, followed her not as soldiers, but as sisters. Sworn to eternal girlhood, they found power in solitude, in stillness, in sharp focus. They did not need protection. They were the protectors. And among them were once mortal girls like Thalia, Grace, daughter of Zeus, who found a second life in Artemis's service. Thalia did not stop being a daughter of the king of gods, but she chose a new family, a new path, one where no boy's betrayal could define her, where no god's prophecy could trap her, where she could run free and wild and holy beneath the moon. Artemis loved her hunters, though she rarely said it. She gave them purpose, she gave them immortality, not in fame, but in breath. In every arrow notched, in every monster slain far from Olympus's gaze. And though she had no throne in the bloodlines of demigods, her presence still echoed. In the courage of girls who said no, in the silence between choices, in the forests of Camp Half-Blood,
when the wind shifts and the leaves hush. That was her. That is her. Artemis does not demand temples. She doesn't crave offerings. But if you truly listen, you can still hear the pads of her feet against pine needles, the whisper of her wolves, the sigh of the stars bowing in respect. She is proof that legacy is not always about lineage. Sometimes it's about refusal, about drawing a line in the myth and saying, I will not be claimed. I will not be written by anyone else. And now, as the moon wanes and the hunt fades into fog, we descend once more into the realm of divine children, this time to the god of messengers, thieves, and boundary crossers. A trickster with a heart of gold. Hermes, the traveler, the whisper between realms, and the father of demigods who know better than anyone how to slip through cracks, survive on charm, and carry secrets heavier than they let on. Let us follow the wind now, light, clever, and full of restless stories into the legacy of Hermes. Hermes is the god of thresholds, of comings and goings, of messages carried between worlds, of feet that never settle and words that never rest. He is the wind between two locked doors, the crack in the wall where secrets escape, the smile on the face of someone who knows just a little too much. Among the Olympians, he is the most human. Not because he is weak, he is anything but because he understands the weight of motion. To move constantly is to be aware of what's left behind, and Hermes leaves things behind, often letters, lovers, children. His demigod children grow up knowing they are noticed, but not always remembered. Loved, but at a distance. Hermes gives, but gives sparingly, a glimpse of a smile, a whispered trick, a warning passed through a dream. And then he is gone again. It makes his children resilient, clever, impossible to pin down. They become the survivors of Camp Half-Blood, not by brute force, but by adaptability. They know how to blend, how to listen, how to read people before those people even speak. And yet, for all their wit, many of Hermes' children carry a quiet ache. The ache of being the in-between, not chosen for great quests like Poseidon's sons, not honored in prophecy like Athena's daughters, just there, helping others, running errands, stuck in the middle. That ache burns brightest in Luke Castellan, a boy born of pain, forged by abandonment, and destined, it seemed, to either break the gods or save them. Luke was not evil. That is the hardest truth of all. He was brilliant, brave, compassionate. He looked after others, especially younger campers. He trained them, protected them, believed in them. But when belief in the gods failed him, when he saw how cruel Olympus could be, how unfair its systems were, how the most loyal could be left behind, he broke. And in that fracture, Kronos slipped through. It is easy to blame Luke, harder to understand him, harder still to see how much of Hermes' silence helped shape that fall. For Luke begged for recognition. He wanted a sign, a purpose, a father who did more than send him messages through wind and winged sandals. But Hermes is the god of travelers. He never stays, and so Luke carved a path where he could be the one to make change no matter the cost. Even as the war unfolded, even as betrayal shattered the camp, there was still a boy underneath the armor, a son who had wanted to matter. And in the end, in the very last moments, Luke did something that rewrote his story. He turned back. He took the burden onto himself. He proved that children of Hermes may walk in shadow, but they are not fated to stay there. Hermes wept for him, not with godly grandeur, but with the quiet pain of a father who knew he'd been too late. The cabin of Hermes at Camp Half-Blood still welcomes all unclaimed demigods, because Hermes understands what it means to wait for identity,
to sit in the in-between. His children are the bridges, the peacekeepers, the ones who know how to carry a prophecy in their back pocket and still make people laugh. They are rarely the loudest, but they are always moving, always helping, always watching. And now, as Section 2 closes, we've walked with 5 Olympians, 5 echoes of power and pain, brilliance and burden. From Athena's clarity to Ares' rage, from Apollo's light to Artemis's vow, from Hermes' loneliness to Luke's sacrifice, we've seen the many ways bloodlines shape more than battle. They shape belief. And still, the throne room of Olympus has more stories to tell. For in Section 3, we journey deeper into Part 2, the next 7 Olympians, whose powers crack the earth, shake the skies, and stir the seas. Let us step forward now and meet the divine forces of Hephaestus, Demeter, Dionysus, Hestia, Hera, Hades, and Persephone. Hephaestus, the god of fire and forge, is not a pretty god. He never pretended to be. He was born into Olympus and cast out almost immediately, his twisted leg deemed a flaw, an imperfection not fit for the halls of golden thrones. But the thing about fire, it never needs to be beautiful to be powerful. Hephaestus fell from Olympus and found his strength not in praise, but in persistence. He learned to shape metal like poetry, to bend the will of stone and spark until it became invention. He built automatons that could sing lullabies and destroy armies, forged weapons that could slay monsters and carve the future. He did not seek adoration. He built because the silence of the forge was a place where pain could become purpose. And his children? They carry that same fire, not the rage of war, but the quiet flame of creation. The campers of Hephaestus are not always loud, not always visible, but they are the ones who hold Camp Half-Blood together with gears, with grit, with 1,000 tiny tools no one else understands. Charles Beckendorf was one such boy, steady, loyal, brave, and brilliant. He wasn't a showman. He didn't need to be. His strength was in every nail placed, every plan crafted, every quiet moment where he stood his ground and asked for nothing in return. He died doing what he was born to do, building something to save others. And then came Leo Valdez, a child of flame in every sense. He was born laughing through tragedy, a boy with too much energy and not enough love. He hid his hurt behind jokes, his genius behind clumsiness, and his longing behind a smirk. But beneath it all, Leo was one of the most powerful demigods of his age, a son of Hephaestus with the rare ability to summon fire itself. Not just the kind that melts metal, the kind that melts loneliness. He built Festus, the bronze dragon, not because he wanted a pet, but because he needed someone to understand him without words. And as the Argo II soared into the sky, Leo was the one fixing every broken piece, literally and emotionally. His hands never stopped moving, even when his heart did. He fell in love, quietly. He grieved loudly. He left when no one expected him to. And when the world thought him gone forever, Leo returned not with a grand speech, but with hope, with calypso, with a new kind of warmth. The kind you only find when you've lived through fire and still want to build something beautiful. The children of Hephaestus don't ask for attention. They ask for time, for patience, for a workshop where they can turn pain into possibility. Their cabin smells like oil and sparks. Their eyes shine not with prophecy, but with blueprints only they can see. They are the quiet dreamers, the hands behind the heroes. And as their stories hum like gears in the background, the earth begins to stir with older magic, a greener kind, a quieter kind. The next Olympian speaks not through metal, but through roots and harvest and rebirth.
Let us now step into the garden of Demeter, the mother of grain and grief, whose demigod children carry a legacy not of war or fire, but of survival. Demeter is the goddess of the harvest, of soil and sprouting things, of the patient rhythm of the seasons. But beneath the golden fields and swaying wheat, her story is rooted in pain, not the pain of violence, but the pain of loss, of waiting, of aching. Her tale is one of love so fierce it breaks the cycle of the world. When her daughter Persephone was taken by Hades, Demeter stopped the earth from blooming. Winter came not as a season, but as a scream, and every flower that wilted whispered her grief. Eventually, the world reached a compromise. Persephone would spend half the year above ground, half below. And so the seasons began. But for Demeter, that split never healed. Her joy is always temporary, her sorrow seasonal. Her children, the demigods of Demeter, carry that same duality. They are born of growth, but also of patience. They know how to nurture others, how to feed a camp through magic and miracle. But they also know how to wait through silence, through winter, through being overlooked. Because when war breaks out and monsters strike, no one calls the gardeners first. And yet, when the dust settles, it is always the children of Demeter who rebuild, who plant the first seed, who turn blood-soaked ground into blooming green again. Katie Gardner was one of them, fierce in her own right, not with weapons, but with will. She defended the strawberry fields like sacred ground, because to her they were life, a promise that beauty could still rise. And in the deeper corners of myth, in stories that flicker between canon and shadow, there are whispers that some children of Persephone walk among the half-bloods too. Children born of spring and shadow of dual thrones between life and death. They are rare, delicate, and powerful, like flowers blooming through frost. And yet Demeter's children are often overlooked, not dramatic enough, not dangerous enough. But perhaps that is the point. Their strength isn't in spectacle, it's in persistence. In knowing that no matter what storm rages, the earth will turn again. That a seed buried in darkness is not dead, just waiting. And so they wait, with trowels, with spells, with stubborn hearts, until the moment they are needed, until the world is ready to bloom again. As we leave behind the scent of soil and the hum of bees, we approach a different god, one who doesn't wait for spring, but brings chaos in his wake like wine spilled across a white tablecloth, a god of madness, freedom, and twisted prophecy. Let us now stumble into the domain of Dionysus and explore the wild legacy of a god who is more than the camp director, a god whose children are born on the edge of control and creativity, teetering between laughter and lunacy. Dionysus is a god people rarely understand. They think of wine, of parties, of strange laughter in the woods at night, and they stop there. But Dionysus is older than all that. He is the god of duality, of joy that can twist into madness, of theater that reveals hidden truths, of losing yourself sometimes to find yourself again. He was born from tragedy, stitched into godhood not by birthright, but by death and resurrection. His mother Semele was a mortal, burned alive by Zeus's divine form. Dionysus was sewn into his father's thigh to survive. From the very beginning, he lived between worlds, mortal and god, madness and miracle. That chaos lives in his children. They are rare because Dionysus is forbidden to father demigods after a punishment from Zeus. But stories slip through the cracks. Myths say he still watches, that his spirit lives inside Camp Half-Blood as Mr. D, not just as punishment, but as prophecy. He loathes the camp, or claims to, drinks Diet Coke instead of wine, sneers at campers, forgets names on purpose. But under that facade there is something else, something ancient, coiled, and wild. He is a god forced into a box, and gods do not take kindly to cages. His moments of seriousness, of sadness, show that even the god of wine carries sorrow. He mourns his lost wife, Ariadne. He grieves for the centuries spent watching mortals self-destruct for pleasure. And when he speaks with authority, the world listens. In rare cases, his children surface unclaimed, often undiagnosed, quietly powerful. They are artists, rebels, mood changers. They can make people dance until their feet bleed, or cry in the middle of laughter. Their power is emotion itself, theater itself, truth disguised as play. These demigods rarely find comfort at camp. Too unpredictable, too misunderstood. But when war comes and morale crumbles, it is the spark of Dionysus that can rally the spirit, that can confuse the enemy, that can break illusions with a single drunken phrase that is actually prophecy in disguise. Dionysus is chaos, yes, but also rebirth. He shows that madness and meaning are not always separate, that sometimes to truly understand the world, you must let go of it for a while. His legacy is not about destruction. It's about breaking boundaries, opening doors, making people feel something so deeply they can't ignore the truth anymore. And as we leave the blood laughter of his domain, we step into a far quieter hearth, one that almost all gods bow to. She does not speak loudly. She is not known for battle, but she is the one who watches the flame, who tends to the stillness, who sees all and asks for nothing. Now we enter the story of Hestia, goddess of the hearth, of home, of peace, and of the children who never ask to be seen, but are always, always present. Zeus, the king of the gods, is often imagined as a thunderclap in the shape of a man. The sky is his breath, lightning his language, storms the shadow of his emotions. He rules Olympus with a voice that can split mountains and a gaze that sees far more than mortals realize, and yet for all his might, Zeus is a god of rules, of hierarchy, of order so rigid it trembles beneath its own weight. He once ruled without question, until prophecy whispered of a child more powerful than the gods themselves. In fear, he made a pact with his brothers Poseidon and Hades, a promise to sire no more children with mortals. But promises mean little to gods, and the thunder could not stay silent. From Zeus came Thalia Grace, born of the wild, raised in chaos, and turned to lightning herself. She was fierce and rebellious, never meant to bow to the heavens. She died once, protecting her friends, and the world turned her into a tree, immortalized not through birthright, but through sacrifice. Later, she would be reborn again as a hunter of Artemis, forsaking mortal aging, leaving behind her demigod destiny to stand outside time. Then came Jason Grace, born after the pact, a child of both prophecy and secrecy. Sent to the Roman camp, he was raised in discipline, in valor, in silence. His power was control, command, a soldier's spark wrapped in a leader's skin. And yet even he questioned the weight of his lineage. Children of Zeus or Jupiter are born to lead, but leadership is a lonely mountaintop. Jason spent his life between camps, between loyalties, between skies that never felt like his. And in the end, he died not with fanfare, but with quiet bravery, sacrifice again, like Thalia. Like most children of Zeus who learn too young that greatness often comes at the cost of peace, The sky is vast but rarely kind. Zeus is a god who sees the world from above, majestic, powerful but removed. His children inherit that distance. They shine but feel apart. Their powers are raw, summoning storms, bending air, riding winds like chariots. But emotionally they are grounded in responsibility, in expectation, in weight. The kind of weight that presses on your chest at night, not from fear but from duty. And as we descend from the clouds, thunder still echoing in the distance, we approach the sea, wild, deep, ancient, where another brother waits. Not a king, but a force. Let us now wade into the legacy of Poseidon, god of oceans, storms, and the quiet ache of those who love too deeply. Poseidon is not a king in the way Zeus is. He does not sit above the world on a throne of judgment. He flows through it, around it, beneath it. The sea is his kingdom, and in its ever-changing tides you find the truth of who he is. Calm one moment, a hurricane the next, deep enough to hide worlds, brutal enough to sink them. He is one of the oldest powers in the world, older than cities, older than maps, and yet his legacy among demigods is most famously marked by a single name, Percy Jackson, a boy born from a forbidden promise, a child of prophecy, a son of the sea. Poseidon did not intend to change the world when he loved Sally Jackson, but the world was changed all the same. Percy inherited more than water powers. He inherited an ancient sadness, a loneliness that feels like staring into the deep, and knowing the deep is staring back. Poseidon's children are rare, but when they appear, they are unforgettable. Their powers are wide as the horizon. They can breathe underwater, command currents, talk to sea life, summon storms with a whisper. But with that power comes distance. Their father is never truly present, always watching, but never near. Percy fought his whole life to understand that. To accept that being a hero didn't mean having a complete family. His battles stretched from Camp Half-Blood to Mount Olympus to the depths of Tartarus, and each time the sea followed him, comforted him, called him. Poseidon shows love not with words, but with waves, with moments of clarity when the ocean goes still, with silent blessings, with tridents etched into sand before they vanish. He is not a warm god, but he is honest. His children often learn to be the same, fierce and loyal, emotional beneath their armor. And sometimes, like Percy, they carry the weight of two worlds, god and mortal, land and sea, love and war. And when Percy stood in front of Olympus and made his final request, he didn't ask for glory. He asked for peace, for recognition, for the gods to stop repeating their mistakes. In that moment, Poseidon didn't need to say anything. The ocean simply paused and listened. That's how you know the sea loves you, not with declarations, but with stillness, with protection, with memory. Other children of Poseidon, like Tyson, the Cyclops, or unnamed demigods scattered across time, have all felt that same current, not always understood, but never abandoned. The sea remembers its own. And now, as we leave the salt and storm behind, our path winds downward, not into the sky or the sea, but into the shadows beneath the earth, a kingdom of silence built from sorrow and stone. Hades waits there, not with open arms, but with an unblinking gaze. Let us now walk carefully into the realm of the last brother, the lord of the underworld, and meet the children born of death, grief, and unimaginable strength. Hades does not demand worship. He does not throw bolts or raise tides. He simply waits in silence, beneath the surface, in a realm most mortals fear to name. The god of the dead is not evil, but he is final. His children do not burst into the world with applause or prophecy. They appear like winter, slow, cold, inevitable. and no child of Hades embodies that more than Nico D'Angelo. Born decades before his time, hidden in the Lotus Hotel for years, and brought into a world that had forgotten how to hold grief gently. Nico is not like Percy or Jason. He does not lead camps or hold thunder in his hands. He is quieter, harder to reach. He speaks to ghosts, travels through shadows. His anger is volcanic, his loyalty unmatched. When his sister Bianca died, another child of Hades lost to the war before she could grow. Nico's heart cracked. And from that fracture came something powerful. He wandered, fell, rose, again and again, not because he wanted to be a hero, but because no one else could do what he could. He survived the labyrinth, braved Tartarus, forgave the gods not with words, but by choosing to stay, to help, to try. That is the mark of Hades' children. Not grand speeches, but survival, quiet strength, love hidden like a treasure beneath centuries of stone. Hades himself has always been distant from Olympus, choosing isolation over insult. The gods mock him, fear him, but never truly understand him. He rules the underworld not with cruelty, but with structure. He keeps the balance, guards the souls, remembers every name, and his demigod children carry that same memory. They know what it means to be overlooked, feared, sometimes hated, and yet they endure. Hazel Levesque, too, is proof of that legacy. A daughter of Pluto, the Roman form of Hades, born in the 1940s, brought back from death by Nico himself. She controls the riches of the earth, but sees the curse in beauty. Her strength is humility. Her gift is second life. And even when the world tries to bury her again, she rises. Because that's what children of Hades do. They walk through the dark. They face the worst of the world. And still, somehow, they choose light. Not because it is easy, but because it matters. Hades does not interfere in mortal wars often. But when he does, when he sends his army or rides out himself in chariots pulled by nightmares, the world remembers why the dead must be respected. His demigod children inherit that presence, that power, that solitude, but also that wisdom. They understand sacrifice, finality, what it means to carry loss like a second heartbeat, and perhaps that's why they are so dangerous and so necessary. Because when the world breaks, it is not thunder or waves that fix it. It is the hand that rises from the ashes, quiet and steady, offering help without asking for praise. That is the bloodline of Hades. Not wrath, but resolve. Not fire, but shadow that protects instead of devours. And now, as we step back from the ancient thrones of the Big Three, we turn towards something younger, wilder, a tapestry of gods not always at the center of Olympus, but always woven into its story. Tricksters, healers, hunters, poets, warriors of nature and chaos and change. Demigods born not from prophecy, but from possibility. As we enter Section 5, we meet the children of the lesser gods and hidden powers, and find that even the smallest bloodlines can shake the world. Not all gods sit on golden thrones or command the skies. Some slip between cracks in prophecy. Some rule the quiet corners of the world where dreams are born, vengeance waits, and magic drifts unseen. These are the lesser gods, though lesser is a lie Olympus tells itself to feel more secure. In truth, they are the gods of nuance, the spaces between thunder and silence, war and peace. And their children? They are the ones who change the game when no one else is watching. Take Hecate, goddess of magic, crossroads, and the mist. She is not loud, but she is everywhere. When mortals glimpse things, they cannot explain a shimmer in the air, a flicker of something impossible that is Hecate's gift. Her demigod children are rare and often untrusted. Magic comes with fear. Power that bends reality draws suspicion. But those who carry her blood are keepers of secrets, masters of illusion. They can bend the mist to protect, to mislead, to survive. Then there is Nemesis, goddess of retribution. Her children carry balance in their bones. Justice is not a courtroom to them, it is a blade, and they know how to wield it. They often walk alone, feared for their sense of fairness, which looks like cruelty to those who've gotten too comfortable. Yet their presence ensures that power never goes unchecked. Nemesis's demigods often appear in moments of collapse when lies have festered too long, when heroes forget they can fall. They bring course correction, not out of anger, but necessity. Iris, goddess of rainbows, may sound gentle, even whimsical. But her children are far more than messengers. They are bridges between worlds, swift, perceptive, and light-footed. They often become mediators, diplomats, peacemakers, and in a world so often divided between war camps and bloodlines, that makes them invaluable. Children of Iris don't always fight on the battlefield, but they win wars with words. Hypnos, god of sleep, leaves behind children who feel like dreams even while awake. They are soft-spoken, observant, and occasionally lost in thoughts that are not their own. Their powers affect the mind, inducing sleep, peering into dreams, even manipulating memories in subtle ways. They are storytellers of the subconscious. They walk through nightmares with calm steps. Not all are suited for combat, but many find their strength in empathy. Morpheus, his son, adds to this gift, and their demigod children often feel detached, otherworldly, as if they live halfway between this realm and another. The line between reality and dream is thin with them. There are others still. Tyche, goddess of luck, whose children live in perpetual unpredictability, lucky or cursed, depending on the hour. Thanatos, god of peaceful death, whose children understand endings without fear. Melanoi, goddess of ghosts and madness, whose offspring are drawn to shadows and echoes. These demigods often feel out of place at Camp Half-Blood or Camp Jupiter, but their powers, though quiet, are often the most crucial in tipping the balance of war, survival, or prophecy. They are misfits with purpose. They speak to the parts of the world even gods avoid. And as we drift deeper into their stories, it becomes clear. Prophecy is not just about the bold and the bright. Sometimes the forgotten ones write the final line, and in the next part of this section, we'll meet the children of nature's guardians, the wild and elemental gods and the demigods who carry forests, rivers, and starlight in their veins. There are gods who speak in prophecy, and then there are gods who speak in wind, in root, in the rhythm of starlight across a midnight forest. These are the elemental gods, ancient, powerful, and so deeply tied to the world that their presence is more felt than seen. And their children? They do not always carry swords. Sometimes they carry silence. Sometimes music. Sometimes the weight of knowing what the world once was. Begin with Pan, the god of the wild. Long thought gone, Pan was not killed. He faded because the wild faded. The forests, the free creatures, the unbothered glades of nature were smothered by human noise. But even after his fading, Pan left behind a ripple, and Grover Underwood, while not a demigod, was perhaps his final chosen. Pan's children, if they exist in blood, are the quiet revolutionaries of the demigod world. They defend what cannot defend itself. They listen to wind and understand its message. Some hear animals speak. Others guide trees to grow back where axes once fell. They are the ones who remind gods and mortals that power without harmony leads to ruin. Then there is Boreas, the north wind, harsh, elegant, ancient. His children are sharp like ice, proud like mountain peaks, and distant like the cold itself. Chione, his daughter and goddess of snow, has her own demigod lineage marked by beauty, ruthlessness, and the terrifying calm of a frozen storm. Children of Boreas and Chione often command cold, not just temperature, but temperament. They are slow to trust, quick to freeze, and impossible to shake once they've decided their course. They ride winds no one else can touch. They isolate, but when they return, it's usually with precision, a storm with a mission. Aura, a lesser-known wind goddess, bore demigods who moved like shadows on a breeze barely there, but capable of tearing through battlefields with silent rage. Notus, Eurus, and Zephyrus, the other Anemoi, also leave children who inherit pieces of the seasons: fury, renewal, heat, unpredictability. Many of these demigods go unnoticed until weather turns strange in their presence, or until the battlefield bends around them like reeds in a gale. Nyx, the goddess of night, predates the Titans. She is older than the gods themselves. And while her children are rarely born, they are some of the most feared. In Tartarus, Percy and Annabeth met her, and they understood what true primordial power feels like, the kind that does not scream, but watches. Her demigod offspring are often pulled between realms, born with a taste for darkness, not in malice but in depth. They understand the unseen, the invisible threads that hold the cosmos. Some walk between dreams and death. Others speak to things even Hades won't name. Then there are demigods of Selene, goddess of the moon, and Helios, titan of the sun. Their power is poetic light and shadow in perfect balance. Children of Selene glow softly in the night, their emotions tied to lunar cycles, their thoughts vast and lonely. Helios's children burn hotter. They radiate leadership and pressure. Expectation coils around them like solar flares. They may seem bright, but inside often carry the burden of always needing to shine. And let us not forget Pontus, the primordial sea before Poseidon. If any of his demigod blood remains, it would feel older, wilder, less human. These children would not be born of prophecy, but of tide and time and salt spirits of sea foam and crashing depth. These elemental legacies create demigods who are unbound by Olympus. They are wanderers, dreamers, defenders of places no one remembers to protect. They exist beyond borders, and when they arrive, be it in battle or silence, they carry echoes of gods long forgotten, but never truly gone. In the next part of Section 5, we'll explore demigods from strange or disputed lineages, children of gods who deny their parentage, claim many identities, or exist between realms like Janus, Phobos, and Deimos, and even abstract forces like chaos and memory itself. Among all the gods and their children, there exists a murky threshold, a place where names blur, domains overlap, and the rules of bloodline and power no longer behave the way they're supposed to. In this twilight zone of Olympus and beyond, we find gods whose demigod offspring are whispered about, doubted, or quietly ignored. They are children born not just of divinity, but of contradiction. Begin with Janus, god of doorways, transitions, and duality. Rarely seen and even more rarely acknowledged by the Olympians, Janus is a god of paradox, of both endings and beginnings, both choices and consequences. His children are born with split instincts. Some are strategists who can see 10 outcomes from one decision. Others are burdened by hesitation, forever pulled between two paths. Their presence often signals great change, not because they cause it, but because they appear when the world is about to shift. Gentlest's demigods may struggle with identity, loyalty, or even time itself, but when they choose a side, they often redefine the game. Then come Phobos and Deimos, the twin gods of fear and terror, sons of Ares. Their parentage is divine, but their demigod offspring? That is trickier. Some say they can only appear through divine possession. Others believe they've sired true mortal children who inherit their power. Either way, these demigods are walking atmospheres surrounded by invisible pulses of panic, dread, or awe. They are not always evil. Many hate the way people flinch when they enter a room. But fear, as a power, is also protection. It's a warning. It's primal. Their strength lies not in brute force, but in instinctual control of emotions. Then we reach the more abstract. Mnemosyne, Titaness of memory, is said to have sired the 9 muses' inspirational forces tied to art, story, and song. But some legends claim she bore mortal children too, marked by perfect recall, haunting dreams, or voices that speak with more than one century's wisdom. These children often grow into poets, prophets, or chroniclers. They remember things no one taught them. They write stories that haven't happened yet. And then there is chaos. Not a god in the traditional sense, but the source of everything, the nothing that birthed the universe. It is said chaos has no face, no form, and yet some claim its essence still touches the world. Could a demigod carry chaos in their veins? If so, they might be capable of unraveling the very fabric of reality, or binding it together when it falls apart. These children, if they exist, would likely live unnoticed even by other demigods, until something cracks, and they're the only ones left who can hold the threads. There are even whispers of gods who have changed forms or titles, creating ambiguous demigod lines. A god who was once male, now female. A goddess who became mortal for a time. These transformations raise questions. What happens to a demigod's powers when the god they're tied to changes shape or identity? These demigods often feel adrift. They don't fit in traditional cabins. They don't always register clearly to monsters or allies. But they often possess flexible, evolving abilities, mirrors of the very gods who birthed them. Finally, there are those who claim to be children of gods who are not supposed to exist anymore, long-dead deities, sealed-away beings, or spirits from pantheons outside the Greek and Roman world. While many dismiss them as delusional, a few leave undeniable marks. Powers with no clear explanation, languages no one taught them, visions from places no one remembers. These disputed and hybrid bloodlines challenge the very foundation of camp half-blood systems. They don't belong in cabins. They don't belong in prophecy. But they exist wildcards in a world that already defies logic. And in the closing part of this section, we'll bring together all the unclaimed, the demigods who never found their parent, whose signs never came, and whose existence reminds us that sometimes identity is not about birth, but about choice. And now we reach the quiet cabins, the ones where no god ever claimed their child. The lonely corner of Camp Half-Blood, where the unclaimed wait watching others glow with divine signs, wondering why their sky never split open with lightning or song or fire. These demigods are the forgotten ones, not because they are weak, but because their parentage hides in mystery. Perhaps their god is too minor to interfere. Perhaps the child was a secret. Or perhaps the god simply chose not to care. These campers live in a state of pause, uncertain whether they belong or merely exist on the edge of Olympus's vision. Yet despite that, many of them find strength in ambiguity. Without a cabin to bind them, they explore all. They train with sword, bow, and staff. They listen to the wind, the stars, and the stories passed down around the campfire. They are not waiting for a sign anymore, they become their own. Some of them eventually do receive their parents' symbol, but by then they've already proven something more important. That demigodhood is not just about bloodline, it is about choice. Others never get claimed, and those are the ones who often write their own stories. They adopt the powers they touch most. They form bonds stronger than names. And sometimes, just sometimes, their god does visit not with lightning, but with silence, with a nod, a flicker of recognition, and that is enough. But there is another layer to this, the demigods who feel claimed by more than one force. Those who don't fully align with the Greek names or their legacies. Those who hear something different when they pray to the gods. Those who don't say Zeus, but Jupiter. Who don't say Ares, but Mars. This leads us into a rift, a mirror realm of gods and bloodlines, where every truth spoken in Greek echoes in Latin. A world not of duplicates, but of dualities. In our next chapter, we step across a cultural divide into a realm just as ancient, just as divine, but cast in marble instead of bronze, in war standards instead of laurel wreaths. We now enter Section 6, Roman variants and split lineages, where gods wear different faces, children are forged in war, and the bloodlines of Olympus take on new names, new duties, and new destinies. When the winds shift and the banners change, when Camp Half-Blood's campfire dims and another flame burns on the western hill, we find ourselves crossing not just geography, but memory into the world of Rome. For while the Greek gods are wild and personal and tangled in stories like vines, their Roman forms are colder, sharper, more strategic like marble instead of clay. And yet, they are the same beings, just seen through a different mirror. The demigods of Camp Jupiter live by those mirrors. They are not just sons and daughters of gods. They are legionnaires, bound by order, honor, and ancient law. Where Camp Half-Blood trains heroes, Camp Jupiter builds soldiers, and that difference echoes in every Roman variant of the gods. Jupiter is not Zeus with a name change. He is discipline, duty, a leader who does not yield to whim or chaos. His children, like Jason Grace, carry storms not as temper tantrums, but as tools of command. Jason flew without wings, stood calm in crisis, and bore the weight of unity between two worlds, because that was the Roman way. Not thunder for thunder's sake, but lightning controlled, refined. Neptune, the Roman aspect of Poseidon, is less tempestuous than his Greek form. He is still god of the sea, but he also watches over horses, earthquakes, and civic strength. His children, like Percy Jackson's Roman counterpart Tyson, or legacy-born children raised in the Roman tradition, are expected to tame their wildness, not ride it. And then there is Pluto, not the lonely Hades of the underworld, but the stern god of wealth, of buried things, of empire and power. His children often walk alone like Hazel Levesque, born of death and gold, cursed and beloved in equal measure. Hazel's journey through time, her battle against curses and fate, reflected the Roman ideal, duty above all. She could have vanished into the shadows of the past. Instead, she marched forward, side by side with heroes who did not always understand her pain, but respected her power. Roman demigods are shaped by the legion, and that means legacy matters more than blood. You don't have to be the child of a god to matter. You can be a legacy, a descendant from long ago, and still rise to greatness. Frank Zheng is one such legacy son of Mars, but also heir to Poseidon's ancient power through Chinese ancestry. He was born with too many paths, too many expectations, and a firewood curse tied to his soul. And yet, like any good Roman, he served, he protected, he grew into his destiny by embracing all sides of himself: warrior, shapeshifter, strategist, friend. The Roman gods, unlike their Greek counterparts, expect their children to follow the rules. They do not thrive in chaos. They endure through control. Children of Bellona, goddess of war, are trained in discipline and strength, often rivaling Ares' children in grit, but surpassing them in order. Children of Trivia, the Roman form of Hecate, deal in crossroads, magic and shadows, not with wild spells, but with power channeled through sacrifice and choice. Even Cupid, known in his Roman form as a fierce force of love and vulnerability, reveals that in Rome, even emotions are weapons. When Cupid appeared to Nico di Angelo and forced him to speak his heart aloud, it wasn't to hurt him, it was to test him. Roman gods don't coddle, they sharpen, and their children bear those edges with pride. But what happens when a Greek soul lives by Roman rules, or a Roman legacy dreams with a Greek heart? That's where the story deepens. That's where the lineages blur. In the next part of our journey, we'll follow the bloodlines that twist and cross demigods born of both worlds, children of one god, but raised by the customs of the other. Split legacies, confused loyalties, and rare demigods whose power doesn't come from a single name, but from the space between pantheons. Because sometimes the most powerful bloodlines aren't pure. They're forged where worlds collide. To truly understand the power of these split lineages, we must enter the lives of those caught between camps, names, and identities, heroes who walk in both worlds and yet feel fully at home in neither. For a child of Mars might wake with dreams in ancient Greek, and a daughter of Aphrodite might train like a Roman tactician. These are not contradictions, they are evolutions. Let us begin with the most visible fracture. Jason Grace and Percy Jackson. Born of brothers, raised apart, they were the centerpiece of a prophecy that demanded unity between two broken camps. Jason, raised in Camp Jupiter, spoke Latin first, saluted, obeyed structure. Percy, shaped by Camp Half-Blood, trusted instinct, leaned on emotion, fought with chaotic grace, and yet they were mirrors, each missing what the other had. When they finally met, not in war but in storm, the world itself held its breath. Here were the sons of Jupiter and Poseidon, but more than that, the embodiment of the divide that had haunted both camps for centuries. And slowly, through quests and loss and sacrifice, that divide began to close. Other demigods walked similar roads. Reina Avila Ramirez Arellano, daughter of Bellona, exemplified Roman strength, unwavering, silent, steel-hearted. But her heart longed not for conquest, but connection. She felt more at home beside Greek-born companions than Roman commanders, and yet never abandoned her role. She carried the Athena Parthenos herself, uniting camps not by decree, but by sheer force of will. Her loyalty was not to a name, but to peace. And then there is Nico di Angelo, perhaps the most fractured of all. Born in Italy in the 1930s, child of Hades, he was neither fully Greek nor Roman. Time bent around him. His soul bore languages and customs that no longer existed. He watched his sister die, felt the sting of betrayal, wandered alone across myths and continents. He was claimed by darkness, but chose love. His powers were vast shadow travel, necromancy, the ability to command ghosts, but his pain ran deeper than the Styx. And yet, it was Nico who bridged the camps in his own way, not with speeches, but by surviving, by loving, by choosing to live. His bond with Will Solus, son of Apollo, is a quiet miracle. Sun and shadow, Greek and something older. Together they remind us that lineage is more than ancestry. It's who you walk beside when your heart feels lost. As the wars of the gods faded, new questions rose. Can a child of Janus, god of doorways and duality, exist in both pantheons at once? Could a demigod descend from a forgotten god, one whose name appears in both Greek and Roman myths, but with different stories? The answer is yes. These hybrid heroes are emerging more and more legacies, with parents on one side and traditions on another. Children of mortals who were raised Roman but claimed by Greek gods. Sons of Minerva who think like Athena. Daughters of Diana who feel a call to Artemis's moonlit hunt. The line is not as clear as it once was. Even the gods struggle to maintain their separate identities. When the gods shift from one form to another, like Mercury turning to Hermes or Vulcan to Hephaestus, it's not a costume change. It's a spiritual mutation. Their power trembles, bends, reforms. And the children of these moments, they are strange, powerful, and vital. They are the next phase in the war between myth and modernity. As the barriers weaken and the mist thins, it's these bloodlines not fully Roman, not fully Greek, that will shape the next prophecies. For in the mingling of names, in the confusion of loyalty, a new generation is being born. They don't ask which camp they belong to. They ask how to build a new one. And now, as we prepare to explore the very roots of that next generation, we must step into the final folds of this lineage tapestry where ancestry grows wild. Gods sleep in forgotten corners, and blood is only the beginning. In the next chapter, we will walk among the myths that are whispered, not declared, the forbidden unions, the immortal anomalies, and the lost children whose power could change everything. These are the rarest bloodlines, the secrets even Olympus is afraid to speak aloud. And so we arrive at the edges of known bloodlines, where the stars grow dimmer and the names harder to trace, where gods forgotten by Rome and Greece linger in the whispers of demigods who don't fit on any camp's map. Here, lineage is more than divine parentage. It's a mosaic of fragments ancestors from other pantheons, heritage traced through dreams instead of scrolls, power born from mortal love as much as immortal legacy. There are demigods whose powers defy explanation, born not of any one god, but from the echo of gods long vanished, from river spirits, from wind nymphs, from the bones of titans. Some carry memories from past lives, others are adopted into legacy, their gifts activated not by blood, but by choice, by proximity to prophecy. The Roman and Greek worlds, once so distant, are now stitched together by these liminal figures. They are children of both or neither. And from that strange liminality, new gods might yet rise. For who is to say that Olympus or the pantheon is truly complete? The world is always growing. New myths take root every day, and so do new heroes. Demigods are no longer just children of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. They are sons of chaos, daughters of twilight, legacies of gods reborn in whispers. And in their journey, we see the truth. It was never just about blood.
Blood is a beginning, not a definition. It gives power, yes, but power without direction, without heart, means nothing. What matters is who the demigod becomes, what they choose, whom they protect, what they sacrifice. Across these bloodlines, these camps, these divine entanglements, one thread holds fast. The human heart, broken and brave, rising again and again beneath the weight of Olympus and fate. And as we step from these divine trees into the clearing of reflection, the questions that remain are no longer about lineage, but about legacy, about love, about will. Because the story of every demigod, from the purest Olympian child to the most fractured Roman-Greek fusion, is not about the god who made them, but the mortal who chose to become a hero. And that story is how we begin our final journey into legacy, into choice, into the quiet, relentless heartbeat of a demigod's soul. Every tale must end, but some stories echo. In the stillness of Camp Half-Blood's twilight and the Roman Forum's golden silence, the wind still carries their names: Percy, Annabeth, Jason, Hazel, Nico, Reyna, Leo, Piper, Frank, not as warriors, not as pawns of prophecy, but as children who made impossible choices. What began with bloodlines and godly parents has ended here in something far more eternal: legacy. Because no matter how divine their origin, every demigod, every single one, must stand in front of a choice. Whether to run, to fight, to love, to forgive, to sacrifice. The gods may grant gifts, but they do not dictate courage. Courage is mortal, and that's what makes it sacred. Take Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon, yes, but also the boy who dove into Tartarus not for glory, but for love, who rejected immortality not once, but twice, choosing to remain with those he loved, flawed and fleeting. Or Annabeth, chaste daughter of Athena, yes, but also the girl who trusted a broken bridge, who walked into darkness with no promise of light. Their powers mattered less than their decisions, their fate less than their free will. And in them, we see the truth. Being a hero has never been about blood. It's about the heart, the part of you that breaks and still beats, the part that doesn't need prophecy to know what's right. Some demigods were born with shining lineage, others with none at all. Yet when the monsters came, when the world tilted, they all stood together. Clarice, whose rage hid her fear. Tyson, whose gentleness redefined what it meant to be strong. Rachel, a mortal girl who became a vessel of truth. And Grover, a satyr who heard the earth scream and chose to answer. Each of them faced a moment when legacy meant nothing, when only choice remained, and they chose to be more than their origins. Even the gods, in their own quiet way, sometimes bow to this truth. They shift because of the heroes who remind them what it means to care. Hermes, grieving for a son. Hestia, choosing the hearth over Olympus. Hades, mourning in silence but still offering aid. These are not divine decrees. They are acts of choice, of change. And so the tapestry of demigods grows stitched not in gold, but in the soft silver thread of decision. In the firelight of Camp Half-Blood, a new child wakes, unaware of their parent's name, but full of questions and dreams. Somewhere across the world in New Rome, a young legacy sharpens their blade, unsure of which god whispers in their blood. But what binds them all is not prophecy, not fate, not even power. It is the decision when the hour comes to stand, to protect, to forgive, to try. And when they do, they become more than demigods. They become legend. Because Olympus may fall and rise again. Names may fade, but the heart of a hero born from choice beats forever in the stories we tell, in the dreams we dream. and in the quiet moments before sleep, when we remember not who the gods are, but who we are becoming. In the hush between stars, in the quiet after battle, what remains is not the clashing of swords or the roar of ancient monsters. It is the soft imprint of choices made in the dark. That is the soul of the demigod story. Not Olympus, not glory, not even survival, but choice again and again, when the path splits and no prophecy speaks. That is where heroes are born, not in the names they carry, but in the steps they take alone. Some of the greatest were never mentioned in oracles, some were never claimed. Some still wait for a sign from their divine parent, and yet they fight anyway. They love anyway. They matter anyway, because heart does not require permission. Demigods like Beckendorf, who faced death in silence so others could live. Selena Beauregard, who chose truth over lies even when it shattered her. Ethan Nakamura, who stood at the edge of revenge and stepped back, too late, but with clarity. And Luke Castellin, cursed, broken, used, who still found the strength to choose sacrifice over power. These names are not just epilogues. They are echoes of the core truth. Legacy is not what you're born into. It's what you leave behind. In the cabins of Camp Half-Blood, shields hang not to show rank, but to tell stories. The children who arrive with nothing but a backpack and fear soon build their own mythology, not of gods, but of friendships, failures, forgiveness. And that's where the heart of this world beats strongest. Not in Olympus, but in the campfires, in the bunk beds, in the places where demigods cry and laugh and fall asleep, hoping tomorrow will be kinder. The same is true at Camp Jupiter. Behind the discipline and ancient rituals, there are young hearts trying to live up to legacies they never asked for, learning that strength is not perfection, but persistence. That honor is not silence, but speaking up when no one else will. That love does not weaken soldiers. It gives them something to return to. The new Rome they are building is not a replica of the past. It is a reimagining, a place where legacy and choice can coexist, where demigods raise families, plant gardens, protect each other, not because a god commands it, but because they've chosen to care. And that is what transforms Olympus more than any quest. Not war, not prophecy, but a steady mortal decision to love, to change, to grow. Because demigods are the gods' reflection, not in power, but in potential. And sometimes the children change the parent. Because of the bravery of a son, Hermes learned to grieve. Because of a daughter's defiance, Athena confronted pride. Because of a son's silence, Hades found a voice. And in those moments, we see that even gods are not immune to legacy, that even immortals can evolve, not because of thrones or temples, but because of a single demigod who chose differently. And so the cycle continues. Heart, not heritage. Choice, not prophecy. A child, standing under the stars, wondering what they're meant to be, and becoming something the gods never expected, but always needed. And maybe in the end, that's what the gods were waiting for all along. Not obedience, not temples carved in marble, but children who would grow into something entirely their own. Not echoes, but originals, not just half-bloods, but whole stories. A new kind of hero. Because once Olympus ruled with thunder and fear, but now it stands because of laughter around a campfire, a girl pulling her friend to safety, a boy refusing to give up even when the sky falls. It stands because of Leo's fire lighting the darkness, because of Nico's shadow walking beside the broken, unafraid, because of Hazel's hands turning cursed ground into blooming hope. These are the moments no prophecy saw coming, and that's the point. Prophecies may shape beginnings, but they do not own endings. The truest myths are made not by fate, but by freedom.
And in that freedom, demigods rise beyond blood, beyond war, beyond Olympus. They become teachers, healers, founders of cities, protectors of strangers, writers of the next generation's stories. Not every hero is forged in fire. Some are shaped in silence, in choosing to forgive a god who forgot them, in staying behind so another can escape, in planting olive trees where a battlefield once stood, in choosing kindness over vengeance. Those choices ripple further than thunder ever could. Perhaps that's why the gods remain so mysterious, because they too are learning, watching their children show them a different way, not perfect, not without scars, but deeply, fiercely human. And maybe that is the real gift the gods gave, not powers, not weapons, but the chance to wrestle with the same question every demigod must face. Who am I beyond what I was born into? In this question lies the seed of every legend, and in the answer, legacy. Because one day, a child will ask, who were they? And the answer won't be son of Poseidon or daughter of Ares. It will be, they were the one who stayed. They were the one who dared. They were the one who forgave. They were the one who led others home. And that will be enough. That will be everything. The blood of gods may grant power, but it is the human heart that makes it meaningful, that dares to love despite fear, that breaks and still chooses to believe, that walks into shadow and still sees stars. And so, in the soft closing pages of this tale, we don't see thrones or monsters or wars. We see a campfire. We see children laughing under constellations. We see a new generation picking up wooden swords, not to fight, but to learn. And we see, always, a path stretching beyond Olympus, beyond prophecies, into the quiet, beating heart of what it means to choose to be a hero. So when you close your eyes tonight and the world fades into quiet, remember this. Legacy is not in who your parents were, but in who you choose to become. And in the world of demigods where monsters rise, gods vanish, and fate looms like storm clouds, it's the smallest decisions that carry the loudest echoes. To stay when others flee, to help when it costs something, to believe when no one else does. These are the quiet revolutions that shape Olympus more than lightning bolts ever could. And they are not written in marble, but in memories, in the laughter of friends, the warmth of cabins, the silent promises made under the stars. This is where every story leaves its final mark, not on a battlefield, but in the lives that follow. In the child who finds strength in an old tale, in the camper who steps into the arena for the first time and whispers, "I can try." In the quiet knowledge that power means nothing if it's not used to protect something worth loving. That's the truth the gods never understood, until their children taught it to them. And maybe one day, when Olympus has changed again, when the old thrones crumble and new ones rise, that lesson will still hold. That love outlives fear, and that a single mortal heart can shake the heavens. So if you've ever felt like you didn't belong, like your blood wasn't enough, like your name didn't matter, let this story be your answer. You are more than the path behind you. You are the choice standing in front of you. And in that choice, you carry every hero who came before, every demigod who stood tall when the sky cracked open, every legacy who forged their own name. And you too are writing your myth one quiet, glowing decision at a time. With that, we drift onward into starlight, into dreams. The story slows, but it does not end. Because stories like this, stories of heart and hope, never truly end. They wait for the next spark, the next sword raised not in war, but in promise. the next hero, born not from prophecy, but from choice. And now, little dreamer, the story dims to embers, but the campfire still burns. Somewhere in the folds of myth and memory, beneath the constellations that once guided ancient heroes, there is a gentle light waiting for you. The wind may carry whispers of gods and monsters, of thrones and temples, but in the hush of this moment, none of that matters. What matters is the warmth, the quiet, the knowledge that even in a world of prophecy and power, the truest magic was never lightning or flight, but choice, the choice to be kind, to be brave, to begin again. Tonight, you've walked beside the children of Olympus, not just the mighty, but the lost, the loyal, the lonely. And in each of them, maybe you saw a piece of yourself, the question in Annabeth's eyes, the fire in Leo's heart, the silence in Nico's shadow. You've seen how bloodlines shape beginnings, but never endings. And now, with stars blinking slow above your pillow, you hold those stories in your hands. Not as lessons, but as lanterns. Carry them gently. Let them glow in the spaces between dreams and daylight. Because even when the monsters are gone and the prophecies go quiet, there will always be another camper, another spark, another story. You are part of that now. And long after the last page fades, after the gods go quiet and the swords are set aside, there will still be campfires, still be choices, still be you. So breathe deep and let your thoughts settle like dust on ancient marble. Let the warmth wrap around you like a familiar cabin quilt. Let the final whisper be not of endings but of openings, because the bloodlines of Olympus stretch far beyond what history remembers into every choice, every heart, every dream. And tonight, that story belongs to you. Good night, hero. Sleep well. A new day waits, and the flame never dies.